Hello, Trollops. Today I come to you with the fourth and final of the installments of the Eustace Diamonds read-along, hosted by Steve Donoghue. I'll leave a link to all his videos down below. This is chapters 60 to 80, so from 60 to the very end of the Eustace Diamonds, where, indeed, I guess we find out we sort of find out the fate of the Eustace Diamonds. The Eustace Diamonds, spoilers, if you're expecting me to be talking non-spoilery at chapter 60 of this book. Nope. You can go back to number 1 where I still don't talk non-spoilery. I guess this is a read-along discussion thing. But yeah, so we find out that Eustace Diamonds are lost to Lizzie, lost to Mr. Camperdown, lost to the Eustaces themselves. They've become, I guess, just the Diamonds. They've lost that whatever, but they've had their fun. There's been the entertainment for all, which we'll get into at the end of the book. So yeah, I guess as we left things in this book, in around chapter 60, always been shaky on. Am I supposed to stop at 59 or 61? Never did learn. Lucy and Frank. Oh, they'd basically broken up. Lucy had given up on Frank, but Lucy, and that's at least how Lucy felt in her mind. Lucy had lost the diamonds and basically was hoping that they were going to stay lost, and that the people who stole them would just kind of remain off the thing. That way her own lies would not get exposed. But of course the cops do catch up with Mr. Benjamin, the Jew lawyer, and I'll come back to the Jew part of that in a little bit, along with Mr. Emilius. That they caught him, so she ends up having to go down and actually give evidence. But of course, being Lizzie, once she's given evidence once, she absconds to Scotland and claims sickness, and gets a doctor to basically BS the thing, saying, oh yeah, she's terribly ill and won't be able to come and have a full public exposure of her periphery. Lord Fawn was trying to get the heck out of this thing, and still really, he was trapped in this. He had gotten himself engaged to Lady Eustace Lizzie without particularly checking things out, and was ensnared by her, and she wasn't going to let him go, and she was going to properly humiliate him. And even though she basically ends up on the bottom of things because the diamonds are the thieves are caught and her lies are exposed, she still gets a dig in at the end. This Anthony Trollope, all the letters in these books of letters of things like Lord Fawn's letter. Lord Fawn, of course, isn't a great letter writer, but Lady Eustace, Lizzie's reply back to him, postdating the letter to really dig it in, saying, "Oh, I would have nothing to do with you," making it appear that she rejected him first before he rejected her. Is just her final little dig in, because that's a kind of unhappy, malcontented, just little fucking ray of sunshine that she is not. Lord George backing away from the situation, and indeed, he pats her on the head at the end and says, yeah, goodbye, good luck, I'm out of here. And, Lord George actually seems to know how to handle himself in disreputable situations. He may be a disreputable person, but he knows when to run. He knows when to get back away. It's like, yeah, that thing. Sir Griffith and Miss Roanoke, their wedding in here was, it's an interesting thing. I think I dropped a little note on Steve's, at the bottom of Steve's video, talking about, Miss Roanoke seems really revolted by Sir Griffin. And indeed, Sir Griffin may be like a repulsive character, but I was almost getting the sense of Miss Roanoke maybe just is not interested in gentlemen in general, because, I mean, she's running in such circles that, yeah, I'm going to have to marry some asshole for the money. And that's what you do. You don't love people, but she seemed to have some kind of particular physical revulsion to Sir Griffin, perhaps as a man. That's my theory. Indeed, she does not go through with the marriage, and there seems to be like a depiction of her like going insane, or of having a nervous breakdown at the very least, sitting at her desk staring at her Bible. It's like, actually that seemed like that was actually a genuine reaction versus Lizzie's feigned illness. There's like Sir Griffin and Roanoke definitely do a good thing of kind of reflecting this sort of this sort of stuff. So who knows? Miss Carbuncle, of course, turns particularly nasty on Lizzie, and they turn on each other, and she's basically grasping, and she gets all that she can out of the situation, including the silverware. And, it's just, Miss Carbuncle, she's a practical woman, and she, even though Miss Roanoke, her main plan for kind of hooking up her niece with money has fallen through, not money, but prestige has fallen through. She still kind of gets everything, and she gets out of town before the trial of Mr. Benjamin happens. Mr. Benjamin is and the actual housebreaker. There's Mr. Emilius, which I have to say has got to be the most distasteful character in the book. It's funny because Lizzie is quite characterized as being, I think Lord Camperdown, Mr. Camperdown, and John Eustace are talking, and it's like, Mr. John Eustace is like, wow, she's like, if it wasn't for her gender, she could make a lawyer, which is like, I think that's an insult at lawyers, a dig at lawyers, as much as it is a compliment of Lizzie's kind of twisty kind of machinations and being able to kind of semantically get around stuff. She's definitely played all of them. She's played a lot of the men in this book. But Mr. Emilius is seen as kind of basically as sneaky, as much of a liar and conniver, that she's like, oh, Lizzie sort of respects her and respects him and kind of like is attracted to that in a man. She wants someone with what she calls poetry, which is an interesting thing for poetry, a poetry of like, is that poetry, or is that, is deception? I mean, I guess there's the whole thing of fiction being a lie, poetry being a lie. It's a lie to tell the truth, though. And I think Lizzie may have kind of mistook the whole thing of poetry. Poetry is to lie and to deceive. It's like, no, poetry, fiction is there to lie, to hopefully illuminate a truth, which I think is what, obviously that's what Mr. Trollope is trying to do, is sort of illuminate some very kind of unsavory truths about this world. However, I kind of come to Mr. Emilius because Mr. Emilius is characterized as, or charged to be, a renegade Jew, somebody who has come over, is a foreigner who's come over and taken on a different name, as perhaps got a wife back in I was going to say the old country. This is all the old country, but back in Vienna or somewhere in there. And so he's characterized as having greasy hair and a hooky nose, which is like, it's all the most horrible kind of, well, I don't know about most horrible, but it's a version of the kind of the grasping, lying, Jew character in books like this. It's anti-Semitic, and indeed you have Mr. Benjamin, the jeweler, again, as this sort of thing of, we're bringing up somebody's religion as sort of like, this is a defining characteristic of why they're such a slimy, disreputable, terrible character. And indeed, some ways, like spoiler alert, Mr. Emilius gets a kind of, Lizzie is characterized as sort of a downed bird with both her wings broken, and Mr. Emilius is the boy who's gonna get the bird while it's weak, at its weakest. And indeed he does. He gets her, and she's like, oh, well, I'll marry him, but I'll make sure the terms are favorable to me. But no, her situation at the end, she is brought so low, she is punished so much, she gets so much of her just desserts that she has to get married to this preacher on all of his terms. And there's sort of a thing of like, wow, she's so terrible that she gets married to the Jewish character, which is like, that's kind of pretty crappy. I mean, this is the anti-Semitism of the time. There was, I believe, it's like 1850, we have like the Jewish emancipation. And a lot of the books that I've read say that basically in England, Roman Catholics and Jewish people weren't actually given kind of full political rights until 1890. But of course, as you probably can see from, you get sympathies from like, aristocracy and upper class people to like people like Hitler later on, that stuff like, and Britain also had a lot of other connections to Germany, but there seems to be that people didn't really mind the whole anti-Semitism in Germany, and it's because there was a rich, full history of anti-Semitism in England. I mean, different varying degrees. I mean, a lot of the people who, one of the reasons why there was all this anti-Semitism in England is that they got a very small percentage of the pogroms, and indeed, I think it's like 1880. So after this book, there is further pogroms and further mass emigrations from Russia, where so a small percent came to England, a larger percent came to the United States, where surprise, surprise, this influx of a different group caused xenophobia and all the nastiness. And unfortunately, yeah, I mean, there's a part of the part of me that says, oh well, you know, Trollope is reflecting his times, but he's using it as a punishment against Lizzie in this book. So in some ways, he's giving his kind of stamp of approval at the same time to saying, haha, I'm going to punish this woman that we've loved to hate all through this book by marrying her off to a renegade Jew at the end. So it's sort of like that's kind of puts him as complicit with this this anti-Semitism at the end of the day. I mean, that said, I mean, at the end of this book, we have another, as I've called it, Marvel kind of stinger at the end, where we have the bigger picture, where we end up going to Lady Glencora and Madame Max Goesler and Lord Chiltern, all these people that I have only learned about from Phineas Finn. And someone who's reading this for the first time, you really would have to at least go back to Phineas Finn, I would have to say, because I've actually missed number 1. I'm going to have to go back and read number 1. But you get all these characters coming together, and Trollope's made a good point throughout the book of saying, oh, this is a very public event where they're all kind of delighting in the exploits. And indeed, they have a thing of like Lord Chiltern, the kind of the bullish kind of no nonsense, but like only interested in hunting who says like, oh God, I'm sick of all this Lady Eustace stuff. I'm sick of all she's done is told a lot of lies and lost a necklace. It's like, and he gets put down, and Lady Glencora is like, well, the woman in the end of the day, this is spoiler because I'm talking about the very last lines of the book, but it's the point of the book in a way. It's like, oh, this woman was a godsend. What would we have done without her? And indeed, there's that sense of what would Trollope have done without someone like Lady Eustace? Because while Lady Eustace gets implicated in this book, I think it's far more all the society around her that supports her, that cushions her. She's someone who is of high standing. So even though she's committed perjury, there's no question that she's not going to get prosecuted for this. Not like if she was a lower class person. Not that I think that, so there is a lot of criticism, a lot of exposure of the seamier side of Victorian society. So in that case, you have to say, oh boy, Lizzie Eustace, what a godsend. What would we have done without her? And so, yeah, that's my finished of my read along of the Eustace Diamonds. I'm just going to add a little thing here at the end. I think they're going on March is like Sense and Sensibility. I'm in the middle of a long a mammoth read, which I've talked about in other things. So probably what I will probably do is just do a little catch up before we get to, because Steve will indeed go on to Phineas Redux, the next in the Palliser novels, which means I'm going to go back and read one of the copies here of Can You Forgive Her, the first of the Palliser novels, which I will not mercifully to all of you do a read along for, but we'll just read it and then just tell you what I thought of it overall in a long and rambly video. So yeah. That's what's happening with me. Trollope, for all his things that I found kind of like kind of groany in there, for the fact that there wasn't a jewel heist, that this was much more a character study, much more of a picking apart of society, that this could have been a noir novel with Lizzie Eustace as the kind of like, I want to rewrite this book as a noir novel, like a 180 page pulp noir novel. I think that could be, maybe that's my NaNoWriMo for this, for the coming year. As much as I do that, I still enjoy my Trollope, and I will, yes, circle back around. Can you forgive her? And then we'll follow on with Phineas Redux. That's the plan, Stan. Don't be coy, Roy. And my video is over. Oi. Bye for now. More videos later.